want to share some concrete information about ministerial transition. Trust is the theme of the month. In times of change and when we are building trust, clear information is really important. When I announced the end of my ministry, I skipped over some basic information that is important for newer UUs. In our tradition, congregations choose their own minister. There is no bishop or church power that tells a minister where to go or requires them to rotate or anything like that. The beauty is that the congregation and the ministers have the chance to sort out what feels like a really good match. The flip side of that power is the responsibility of doing the work of searching. I shared last week my time at Tapestry will wrap up at the end of June. I'm leaving to pursue a unique opportunity that I just can't pass up. It's the congregation's job, with some assistance from our denominational staff, to select an interim minister, someone who will be here for a couple of years while Tapestry figures out the steps for a next long-term settled minister. The board has formed a search committee to select an interim minister. That committee includes Nikki Contractor, Paul Brady, Cheryl Hagan, Wendy Washington, and Scott Westerfield. Their first step is putting together a thorough and honest description of Tapestry so that potential candidates can find us. And then that job posting will be completed by April 18th, which is very, very soon. Then interested qualified ministers will submit their information. If all goes as planned, the board has the hiring authority to make an offer and hire an interim that will start August 1st. The UUA, our denomination, has a whole office dedicated to this important matchmaking process. Rest assured that we are not creating something from scratch here. It's more like plugging into a system that's pretty well established. This is the same season that ministerial transitions are happening all around the country. Hiring new ministers or staff in church brings a delicate balance of transparency and privacy. The board and the search committee will share as much information as they legally can, but please keep in mind that this hiring process is just like the places that you work or have worked. Labor laws guarantee a certain amount of privacy, and the ministers applying for this position at Tapestry may be coming from other employment or ministry positions. That all means that the search committee won't be able to disclose exactly who they're talking to in the selection process. That's not for the joy of keeping secrets. That's just for the joy of honoring everyone in this process. For some of you, my ministry at Tapestry is all you know of Unitarian Universalism. But I promise you, we are a much bigger tradition than that, much bigger than what goes on between these walls. Our faith today includes 1,096 different congregations and 130,265 members in the United States. We are a quirky, passionate, justice-making people. Among that larger movement, there are ministers of all ages and genders and races. Their personal theologies are just as diverse as the theologies here at Tapestry. All are educated and credentialed in a wildly rigorous process. I am glad that you have come to know Tapestry as your home, but maybe you can think of it as one little cottage in a much bigger village of Unitarian Universalists who share our values. These are good neighbors to have, and there are lots of them. Some of you are concerned about Tapestry's immediate future. We are in a pledge campaign, after all, in case you missed that. As much as I can, without being a burden or a nag, I encourage you to dig into your commitment here. When it feels like the world is on fire, that's a big ask. But I hope you will also consider when it feels like the world out there is on fire, it becomes all that more important to tend to the vitality and safety of this spiritual home, not just for yourself, but for everyone. One of the tasks of ministry is to articulate a vision for a community. If I'm honest, I have stumbled a little bit in that role over the past 12 years. I've never held a vision that is dramatically different from what we have been doing or growing toward. My vision has been this, all of this, more of this. Keep doing Tapestry better and getting stronger and caring for one another better and being a more stable institution and creating more justice in the surrounding community. My vision has always been to be the best, healthiest version of Tapestry that we can be. And that, to me, is a very worthwhile goal. And it doesn't depend on me. There's a model in psychology and ministry called family systems theory. Several of our mental health professionals are familiar with it, and if you pay attention to your own family at all, you have seen this play out. Family systems theory basically says that each family's members' behavior is best understood as part of a larger pattern of interactions. Change in one member's behavior can lead to changes in another. A bit like a machine, the different pieces fit together and function or dysfunction together. We each play a role within the system, day after day, decade after decade. Within family systems theory, creating change or improving the well-being of one person often means making shifts in that whole system. Creating change is quite difficult. It turns out congregations are very, very similar to families. They're just a lot bigger. The roles that we play are often related to the roles that others play. We step in and fill the spaces that are left in the system. That's part of why shifting the culture of a congregation is very, very hard. I sometimes refer to it as congregational DNA. The culture with which a congregation is created often sticks with that community forever. It's actually quite strange how powerful this DNA is. The good news is, this is a welcoming community. It was founded by bright, caring people who like to have a good time, care for one another, are genuinely open to new ideas and want to make a difference in the world in pragmatic, tangible ways. You are very pragmatic people here. That's the congregation that I stepped into 12 years ago. It's who you are now and likely who Tapestry will be 50 years from now. We humans tend to preserve our ways of doing things. That conservative inclination is a double-edged sword. But when it comes to preserving what we do well, it's a good thing. I know this sounds very hopeful, and maybe a little Pollyanna-ish. I don't mean to be dismissive of fears. This is a time of transition and loss. In some writing, people compare the end of ministry to the dying process. There are only a few important tasks. One is to get your affairs in order, tying up the really important loose ends. The second big task is to tend to relationships, letting go of the petty differences to say honest thank you and goodbyes. And the third task is accepting the reality that nothing in this life is forever. No one's dying here, but there are some powerful similarities. It's a time for getting affairs in order, a time for honoring one another, and time for letting go, so that we can all prepare ourselves to fully embrace what comes next. That might look different for different people. I encourage you, though, to let your heart feel what it feels and let your body feel what it feels. Be patient with it. Take some time when you can to tend to whatever comes up for you. Grief looks different for different people. We say this at the beginning of every time we run the grief group here at Tapestry. It's an individual process. Because of that individual experience, it can feel isolating. Other people around you may not feel the exact same way you are, or at least not talking about it, and that can make us feel different or alone. For all sorts of reasons, this is a good time to plug into smaller groups at Tapestry. I was honestly a little shocked yesterday when 20 people showed up here for a chili cook-off. I think we had one pot of chili for every 2 people. It was truly gluttonous. At least one person had to pause before they could get in a car to drive home. There is growing strength in our small groups that I've done really little in leading. I'm talking about our Women's Wisdom Circle and the Men's Group and the Progressive Parents Group and the Circle of Activities at Laguna Woods. I urge you to plug in to the network of groups and activities, especially if you're worried about this time of transition. Being with other people is good for you, and it is good for them. The Buddhist story in our reading this morning was really powerful for me when I came across it. It's a story of something that happens in nature all the time, a herd of animals, in this case cows, forging a river together. For the mature cows, crossing takes a tiny bit of effort. Having done this several times before and trusting in their size, they head forward. The younger, less experienced ones struggle through. For some, it is a terrifying journey, but they're urged on by the voices of their elders. Traditionally, the story points more toward the role of the Buddha for easing the rush of the water down the river, and the Buddha as the model of that first brave cow forging forward. But I think it's also an incredibly powerful metaphor for mentorship and the sustenance available in community. You have almost certainly heard about people having a sponsor in 12-step programs, a mentor on that path of sobriety. Interestingly, sponsors aren't typically assigned. Newbies are required to seek out a sponsor. And the instruction, I think, is fascinating. They say, when picking a sponsor, look for someone who has what you want. Obviously, they're not talking about a house or a car. Look for someone who has the type of life that you are striving for, the type of integrity or the type of relationships, the drive, the grounding, whatever it is. When picking your mentor within the group, look for someone who has what you want. Some of our Christian neighbors use the phrase spiritual maturity. That kind of hierarchy paired with religious language rubs the wrong way a little bit. Yet I know deep down there are among us people who have crossed the river with confidence because they have done it so many times before. They have been there and seen some stuff. Some people have a level of courage, trusting in their own ability, perhaps putting on a brave face for others to forge ahead. They're likely tethered to some deeper faith as well. For us, spiritual maturity is probably not the right phase, but I know darn well that there are people in this congregation who have what I want. Part of that instruction to find a mentor who has what you want honors that those goals are different. At Tapestry, there are people who have had remarkable careers, like unbelievable careers. There are other people who have found the courage to step aside out of the rat race and to live an intentionally slower life. Some have retired in ways that squeeze out every last drop of life in ways that are just amazing. Some of you reinvented your life several times over. Some engineered a life that enabled travel and exploration. Some poured their life energy into parenting. Success, or getting to the other side, looks like a lot of different wonderful things. If some of those things sound like what you want, pay attention. Pull up a chair, invite those folks to coffee. Because it turns out those folks who have been there and accomplished great things also tend to be quite generous with their time and with their heart. The reverse is also true. To whom much is given, much will be expected. Look around. There are folks navigating life challenges that you conquered long ago. There are folks having kids, raising infants, perhaps scarier, raising teenagers. A handful of adults whose careers are thriving and they're trying to figure out how to leverage their generosity. Like, how do I make a difference with my money in the world? There are people facing retirement or divorce or widowhood for the first time. There are people who could benefit tremendously from someone else who has crossed that river before them. You might not love being compared to cows. Just remember, the Buddha was teaching in India, where cows were the most sacred of animals. And we humans are such social animals too. Individually, we're pretty weak and slow in nature. But together, we can move mountains. Together, we can defend one another and cross into new territories that we never thought were possible. There are great things in store for this scrappy congregation. Faith is a slippery word, but I can confidently say that I have faith in you and these next steps. Amen.